It was a Tuesday, just like any other Tuesday in the quiet British town of Little Benton. Clouds gathered, casting a grey pallor over the cobblestone streets. Rain, a familiar visitor, began to fall. It started ordinarily enough, a gentle drumming against window panes. Then it happened. The rain turned red. The shift was sudden, dramatic. The once clear droplets transformed into a cascade of crimson. It was as though the sky itself was bleeding. People paused, their everyday routines forgotten, and stared in disbelief. This was not the gentle rain of a typical British afternoon. This was something different, something unsettling. The red rain was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. It was as if the sky itself had been wounded, bleeding its sorrow down upon the earth. People emerged from their homes, drawn by the strange, almost otherworldly hue that coloured the world in shades of crimson. The usual patter of rain was replaced by a heavy, almost ominous drumming, echoing through the empty streets and alleys. It fell in thick sheets, staining the pavement a disturbing shade of scarlet. The gutters overflowed with red streams swirling and mixing with the dust and debris of the city. Every puddle became a mirror, reflecting a world transformed, as if the city itself had been transported into a fever dream. Cars crawled through the downpour, their wipers smearing crimson streaks across the glass, leaving drivers squinting in disbelief. The familiar became strange, and the ordinary was suddenly tinged with unease. It clung to umbrellas, turning them into grotesque parodies of their cheerful selves. The bright patterns and colours were lost beneath the relentless red, as if the rain was determined to erase all traces of normalcy. A metallic tang filled the air, sharp and unfamiliar. It was a scent that seemed to settle on the tongue, lingering long after each breath. People exchanged uneasy glances, trying to place the source of the strange aroma. It was the smell of rust, but amplified, overwhelming. The air felt heavy, saturated with the scent of iron and something else, something that made the skin prickle and the mind race with questions. People hesitantly touched the strange water. Some reached out with trembling hands, curiosity battling with caution. The droplets slid across their skin, leaving behind a trail of colour that seemed both beautiful and unsettling. It was cool to the touch, like regular rain, but it left behind a faint reddish residue that was impossible to ignore. The stains clung stubbornly, refusing to wash away, a silent reminder of the rain's unnatural origin. Children, initially captivated by the novelty, were quickly ushered indoors by concerned parents. The adults' faces were tight with worry, their voices hushed as they tried to shield their families from the unknown. News crews arrived, their cameras capturing the surreal scene as experts speculated wildly about the cause. Was it pollution, a freak of nature, or something far more sinister? Theories spread as quickly as the rain itself. Whispers of apprehension travelled faster than the wind, painting the town with an undercurrent of fear. In every corner, people gathered in small groups, their conversations laced with anxiety and wonder, as the crimson cascade continued to fall, rewriting the rules of the familiar world. The red rain lasted for exactly 7 minutes. 7 minutes that would come to define an entire generation in Little Benton. The world outside was transformed, bathed in a surreal crimson glow that seemed to seep into every corner, every shadow. People pressed their faces to the glass, unable to look away, transfixed by the unnatural spectacle unfolding before them. 7 minutes that felt like an eternity, each second stretched, heavy with dread and anticipation, as if time itself had slowed to witness the event. The ticking of clocks became thunderous, echoing through silent rooms, marking the passage of moments that would never be forgotten. 7 minutes that would forever be etched in the memories of the inhabitants of Little Benton. Neighbours gathered in doorways, clutching each other for comfort, their eyes wide with disbelief. Children, usually so quick to play in the rain, stood frozen, sensing the fear in the adults around them. As quickly as it began, the crimson downpour ceased. The rain stopped so suddenly it was as if someone had flipped a switch, leaving the world suspended in a moment of stunned silence. The clouds parted, revealing a sky eerily clear and blue, as if nothing had happened. The transformation was so abrupt, so complete, that it left everyone questioning their own senses. Was it possible that the world could return to normal so quickly after something so inexplicable? The silence in the aftermath was deafening. Not a bird sang, not a car passed. The only sound was the distant drip of water from rooftops, a faint reminder of the chaos that had just swept through the town. Gone was the rhythmic drumming of raindrops. The familiar comfort of a storm had been replaced by an uneasy hush, as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for something else to happen. Gone was the metallic scent that had permeated the air. In its place lingered a strange, almost electric tang, a reminder that what had just occurred was anything but ordinary. All that remained was a disquieting stillness, a sense of wrongness that settled over the town like a shroud. The familiar streets of Little Benton now felt foreign, as if the rain had washed away more than just dust and dirt. It had taken something intangible, something vital. People emerged from their homes, their faces etched with a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity. They spoke in hushed tones, voices trembling as they tried to make sense of what they had witnessed. Some reached out to touch the wet ground, half expecting it to stain their fingers red. What had just happened, and what did it mean? The questions hung in the air unanswered, as the people of Little Benton realized that their world had changed in ways they could not yet understand. The red rain was over, but its shadow lingered, casting doubt and fear over everything that followed. The most immediate change was in the people themselves. Those who had been caught in the red rain, their skin still bearing the faintest reddish tinge, seemed different, calmer, quieter. Their usual anxieties and worries seemed to have evaporated, leaving behind an unnerving tranquility. Arguments ceased mid-sentence, replaced by blank stares. Road rage dissolved into polite nods. Even the children, normally a whirlwind of energy, were strangely subdued, their laughter replaced by an unsettling silence. The usual cacophony of daily life was gone, replaced by a disconcerting harmony that felt profoundly unnatural. The silence spread like a virus, infiltrating every aspect of life in Little Benton. Families sat together at dinner tables, their meals growing cold as they stared blankly at each other, their usual lively conversations reduced to monosyllabic utterances. Friends met for coffee, their cups untouched, their laughter replaced by strained smiles. Strangers passed each other on the street without a word, their faces devoid of the usual hurried indifference. The world seemed to be holding its breath, trapped in a state of suspended animation. The peace was absolute, pervasive, and, well, utterly terrifying. The changes extended beyond individual behavior. Schools, once bustling with the energy of youth, were now eerily quiet. Classrooms, usually alive with the murmur of discussion and the scribbling of pens, were now filled with an unsettling stillness. Teachers, their lesson plans forgotten, stared blankly at their students, who in turn stared back with empty eyes. Markets, once vibrant hubs of commerce, stood deserted, their stalls overflowing with unsold goods. The usual clamour of bartering and laughter had been replaced by an oppressive silence. The heart of Little Benton, once pulsing with life, had come to a standstill. As days turned into weeks, the initial shock wore off, replaced by a creeping dread. The peace, once a welcome respite from the usual chaos of life, had become a suffocating blanket, stifling all joy, ambition, and creativity. People went through the motions of their daily routines with robotic precision, their faces masks of serene indifference. The world was a symphony played in a minor key, a melancholic melody devoid of any highs or lows. It was a world painted in shades of grey, where the vibrant hues of human emotion had been washed away, leaving behind a canvas of unsettling tranquility. The absence of conflict, while seemingly desirable, came at a steep price. Without ambition, progress ground to a halt. Without disagreement, innovation withered on the vine. Without the full spectrum of human emotion, life in Little Benton had become a pale imitation of its former self. The town, once a place of growth and change, was now frozen in time, trapped in an endless loop of peaceful repetition. The red rain, in its quest to eradicate negativity, had inadvertently stripped away the very essence of what it meant to be human. As the days bled into weeks, the inhabitants of Little Benton were left to ponder their fate. The world outside seemed to have faded away, leaving only the gentle hush of wind through empty streets and the distant calls of birds. Each morning the sun rose over the rooftops, casting long shadows that crept silently across the ground as if time itself had slowed to a crawl. People moved through their routines with a quiet determination, but beneath the surface uncertainty lingered. Conversations were hushed, glances exchanged with unspoken questions. What would come next? Would life ever return to what it once was? Was this peace a blessing, a chance to start anew, to build a better world free from conflict and strife? For some, the silence brought hope, a rare opportunity to reconnect with neighbours, to mend fences both literal and figurative, and to nurture the seeds of community. Gardens flourished where once there was only neglect, and laughter, though tentative, began to return to the air. The absence of chaos allowed for reflection, for dreams of a future shaped by kindness and cooperation. Or was it a curse, a slow and insidious poison that would eventually erode their humanity, leaving them as empty shells, content to exist in a world devoid of passion, purpose, or meaning? For others, the quiet was suffocating. The absence of struggle left a void, a gnawing emptiness that crept into their hearts. Days blurred together, and the spark that once drove them forward began to fade. Without challenge, without the friction of life's difficulties, some wondered if they were losing themselves, becoming shadows of who they once were. The red rain had come and gone, leaving behind a silence more deafening than any storm. Its memory lingered in the puddles that mirrored the crimson sky, in the abandoned playgrounds and deserted roads. The world felt changed, as if holding its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. And in the stillness, one question echoed. What was the price of peace, and were they willing to pay it? As the people of Little Benton gazed out at their quiet world, they knew the answer would shape not just their future, but the very essence of who they would become.